What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Walkout Podcast,
where we cover fights, news, and more.
And today we're going to be talking about the UFC 317 card that takes place in the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas on International Fight Week. And we're going to start by covering the main event of Ilia versus Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title. What's your opinion on this one?
Yeah, this is a really big one. Probably one of the biggest fights of the year.
Yeah.
And we have Charles Oliveira, who has a chance to become the lightweight champion for I think it's the third time.
Would it be so? I thought it was second.
No, second, yes.
Yeah, I think,
second if he wins this fight. And for Ilia to become to join the club of being a two-time division champion.
Yeah,
in the UFC.
A big thing to say, right?
Yeah.
To be able to conquer two weight division. I even heard him mention that he wants to move up to welterweights someday, and I think that's maybe clutching at straws a bit, but he certainly has a big chance. I mean, he's a pretty large betting favorite here.
Yeah.
Would you say that it's justified that he's such a big favorite against Charles, or?
I would say that if you look at the fighters themselves, and for example Charles, his last fight against Chandler, not being the best for both of them, and Ilia coming off two really big wins in knockouts against Alex Volkanovski and then Max Holloway.
Yeah.
I think that if you look at it from that perspective, it might be warranted, but if you look at it from another perspective, so for example how the fight would probably play out with a high degree of a finish, and with Oliveira being such a good submission artist, and really just finding submissions, and even has found knockouts before also against a lot of opponents, and they are both of these guys are very explosive when they want to be. They push hard against the other fighter, and they are always looking for the finish. So I think that if you look at it from that perspective, I don't think that it should be that big of a difference in the betting. I think that the odds should be closer to reflect that it's likely going to be a finish, and a finish is always going to be, one way or the other. You're not just going to get like a decision that's slowly going to crawl over to someone's advantage. A finish comes from something just somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, Charles Oliveira has the most performance bonuses in UFC history, right? So he's always likely to get a finish. I think the only thing that may justify the odds being this way is the fact, like you mentioned there, of Oliveira's last fight against Chandler. Because, I mean, in my opinion, Chandler didn't look good at all, and Oliveira still couldn't finish him. And I think that might be, in some people's eyes, why when you match a guy like Topuria, who's knocked out back-to-back, like you said, Holloway and Volkanovski, two of the greatest all time, against a guy who couldn't finish Michael Chandler, if you look at the form, that might speak in Topuria's favor. But another thing here that's interesting is the weight difference as well for Topuria, because I've seen a lot of people claim that the jump from featherweight to lightweight is very big, even though it's only 10 pounds. It seems to do a lot, and a lot of people have made a comparison between McGregor and Topuria, when McGregor jumped from featherweight to lightweight and seemed to lose all of his power. Do you think that's going to be an issue here for Topuria, or?
Yeah, I think that I don't know about the power aspect of it. I think that Ilia has fought before at lightweight against Jai Herbert, and he knocked him out at lightweight, and that was a short notice fight.
No.
So I don't really see him having that. We don't know yet. That's the thing. Like you said, other fighters have said before, and we have the facts to back it up, as you know what happened with McGregor.
Yeah.
He lost some of that power, or a lot of that power, and a lot of other fighters have had to at least adjust. So, for example, Charles himself had to adjust to moving up. And so I think that will definitely play a role, but I do think that Ilia will, since he himself he's talked so much about this, about moving up, and how natural it apparently feels to be at lightweight, and I don't think that he can go in. He can't just say all of that and then turn up at fight night and just looking completely off it, looking like he shouldn't belong in that division. He has to back up what he's talking about, and I think that he's done that before. So
that's a big point.
But I absolutely agree that there's still going to be adjustments. You're not going to come into a new weight division and just, regardless of what you say or what you think or how your mentality is, your body is going to need to adapt.
Yeah.
Especially since he's been talking about having to do a lot of weight cuts and stuff before. Your body is going to need to adapt to not having to do a lot of those weight cuts the same. He's probably going to start bulking more after this fight to become more of a natural lightweight fighter. So you're completely right in that aspect. We're definitely going to see some form of adjustment. The question will be, will this affect his speed and power? I don't know. I don't think the power at least will get adjusted, but I think that we could definitely see something at least in the strength aspect against the other lightweights in wrestling maybe.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, he's a good technical wrestler as well.
And the size difference. Just the size difference in height, reach, that's going to be a different thing.
Yeah, right? Because he's not that big of a guy, Ilia, right, for the division. But he also has a lot of power and quite a good build also. He's well-rounded, he's great wrestling.
Quite stocky, small torso.
Yeah, but it's still pretty athletic because, I mean, if you look at someone like Michael Chandler, who's also quite stocky, it's not the same though, is it? I mean, and it's a big point you made there with Ilia Topuria and how he backs up what he says. I mean, he's really good at manifesting. When he said that he was gonna knock out Volkanovski,
we didn't believe it.
No, not for a second. Not for a second. And he did quite easily, and that hurts me to say, but he did, right? And the same thing against Holloway. I don't think he's ever been knocked out or finished, Max Holloway.
No,
Ilia
not
said
even been knocked down. It's not even been knocked down.
Exactly. And what did Ilia do? He said he was going to finish him, and he went in and worked out Max's game plan and found a way to knock out the guy you can't even knock down, like you mentioned there. So, I mean, if he says it now, can we doubt him? I mean, sure, it's a big weight jump, but I think pound for pound, Volkanovski is definitely a better fighter than Charles Oliveira, and some people would argue that Max Holloway is as well. And he found ways to knock out both of them. So it's going to be an interesting one to follow. And as you said, both guys really have a high finishing rate and a lot of ways to win fights. But Charles does his best work, in my opinion, with his grappling, right? With his jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And are you going to get to those positions against a guy like Ilia? I doubt it with his striking. Do you think so?
Yeah, his striking and also his own proficiency in BJJ and Greco-Roman wrestling.
Yeah.
So, of course, I think that Oliveira is the better grappler of the two. I mean, a lot of his own game plans or fighting style is based off it, almost all of it.
Yeah.
So I think that, of course, he's the better one as of right now in that aspect. But Ilia is definitely well-rounded enough to counter that, I believe. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an aspect of it, but I have a hard time seeing him being able to... I mean, it can happen. Yeah. Of course, that's the thing. That's the nature of this fight. Both of them are going to be moving forward, looking for the finish. Maybe Ilia overshoots. Charles jumps on his back or something.
Yeah.
And gets a submission. That can absolutely happen.
Possible.
It's possible.
But Ilia's he's a smart fighter, though. Because, I mean, a guy like Michael Chandler did that, and Charles didn't finish him. But I think it's a disgrace to compare him to Michael Chandler, Ilia, that is, because he's so smart. Yeah. You don't knock out Volkanovski and Holloway back-to-back just with power or strength or something like that.
It's placement and accuracy, absolutely.
Yeah.
And feet placement.
And a lot of fight IQ as well.
Yeah.
And I think you'll use that in this fight. And in my opinion, I mean, we can move on to the official prediction. How do you see this one end?
I think it ends with a knockout from Topuria.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be ending in the first or second round, actually. And I think it's going to be a crazy fight, absolutely.
What a statement that would be.
Yeah.
In the first round.
I mean, the only reason why I said that really, otherwise I would predict that maybe the third, like with Holloway, the third round or the second round. Yeah. But it's because he himself has talked about, I'm going to finish him in the first round. And he said it several times, going to do it in the first round. Charles himself has said, he hasn't said anything about being cautious of Ilia's power. he said himself, I'm going to be moving forward, I'm going to be taking the fight, I'm the lightweight here. I'm the king of this division as of currently, and you're the intruder. So he's going to be standing his ground and really pushing. And that's sort of what I'm afraid of. I can see something happening in round 1, not super early, but they're both feeling each other out, both are pushing, especially Charles. And maybe, like you said, Topuria, he's a super high IQ fighter. So I can absolutely see a scenario where he just baits him in, maybe for a clinch or a takedown, something. He just shows him something that you can go, take me here, I'm open for a takedown here, a submission attempt.
Yeah.
And then he just throws an uppercut or, I don't know, just some kind of really finishing move. I think that might be the game plan, to be honest. What do you think? Do you agree with that assessment, or do you think it's going to be a little bit later or decision? No?
I mean, against a guy like Holloway, it took him some time, but that's because Max is so tough to break down, right? But I have to agree with you. I think that Ilia will make this finish pretty early. Yeah. I would say second round, maybe, possibly.
And that
maybe
doesn't
third.
mean that Charles is a bad fighter or
no.
any sort of. It just means that these are two guys that are going to be going at it, and they're going to be super aggressive, and they have someone here who can finish easily, which is Ilia, who has that knockout power. So
and he has, Oliveira has a lot of courage, right? And he doesn't cower down, and I think that will be the end of him in this fight, and that's also to his credit, because I mean, a fighter who would run away from Topuria might survive to run 3 or 4 possibly, but like you mentioned earlier, Oliveira, I believe, will push forward like he always does, and I can't see him stand with Ilia. No one can take that power, even though he moves up.
You can't stand and bang with him. That's
and I don't believe that the advantage of Ilia moving up and Charles being having spent more time at lightweight, I don't think that's going to be enough for him to succeed here. Charles, that is. So I would have to agree with Ilia KO or TKO, maybe ground and pound. Round 2 would be my prediction, somewhere like that. But I think it will be a very big statement for Ilia Topuria.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's almost sad, because we're talking about all of these legends. We're talking about Volkanovski. We're talking about Holloway. Oliveira. These are legends who we have been, watching for several years from when they started.
Yeah.
And they kept moving up, and now you have this guy who's just going around and he's just
wiping him out.
Yeah,
one
like
after the other.
Like a hitman who's just taking contracts and stuff, and it's not even on him really. It's just he has to take this fight because these are the best guys in this division.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, but it's hard to see legends being knocked out cold, but I think that's what's going to happen in this one. I mean,
one thing that we haven't really covered is that the fact that Charles Oliveira takes a lot of damage.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
He absorbs so much damage, and I think he has like 45 professional fights in his career. That's a lot, even though it's only 35, which isn't that high of an age. I mean, Volkanovski won the featherweight title at that, reclaimed it, that is. But I still believe that all that damage, it has to accumulate, right, over the years.
Yeah.
And like we've seen with a lot of other fighters, there comes a point where your shin just goes. When you're old enough and have taken enough damage, no one's unbeatable until the very end. And I think this might be the real downfall of Charles Oliveira that we see after this fight.
Yeah.
I think it's going to get finished pretty brutally. And moving on, I think his shin might be gone after this fight.
That's brutal, man. That's
it
that's
really
sad
is
to think about, but it's realistic. What you're saying, it's completely realistic. If what we predicted is going to happen, then absolutely, I think that's realistic. It's sad, but it's the truth. Not everyone can be like good old Volk, who comes off from 2 knockouts and then takes back the title.
Yeah. And I mean, I just can't see, even though, like you said earlier, Charles is a great fighter and a former great champion, but he's not built the same like Volk, in my opinion.
He's a great showman. He puts on this really entertaining display. Probably some of the most, if you're looking at the last 10 years, probably the most entertaining fighter.
Yeah.
If you're looking at someone who's also been a top fighter and been the champion, stuff like that. He's probably the most entertaining fighter among those guys, and most performance bonuses, like we covered. Yeah,
and never scared, never boring. Yeah. But I think that will be his downfall here, and they will end up getting him knocked out on Saturday.
And I think that is probably also the biggest reason for why we also predicted this knockout, is because, like you covered, the fact that he has, it's not like Holloway or Volk, who's almost never been, before obviously against Islam, but before that almost never been knocked out or knocked down. So it's a completely different thing with Charles, because Charles has been knocked down. He has been knocked out, even knocked out cold earlier in his career. And so we have seen that before, and he just, in general, he's someone who doesn't have the striking defense of a Holloway, of a Volkanovski.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So even if we're taking into account, let's say that Ilia has a 50% power debuff or something, eventually he's just gonna keep hitting those shots that he couldn't hit against Volk, that he couldn't hit against Holloway, and even then he hit a lot of shots probably. But he's just gonna be hitting more and more and more against Charles when he's going to be rushing forward and putting pressure. So yeah, that's actually the biggest reason why we predicted this knockout. I believe it's because of how Oliveira fights.
Yeah.
How he takes damage.
Yeah, definitely. And when you look at, like you said, some guys who are a bit maybe more smarter in the fighting aspect, like Volk and Holloway, and they ended up getting knocked out. I can't see a world where Oliveira doesn't.
No.
Alright, so moving on, we're gonna predict the rest of the card, beginning with the championship of the flyweight division. Alexandre Pantoja fighting Kai Kara-France. Who do you think takes out the victory here?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Pantoja here. I think that he deserves his respect in this division, and I think that he has shown time and time again that he is the best flyweight in the UFC as of currently, and he is dominating that division, and I haven't seen anything from him as of late in his latest fight, or from Kai Kara in his latest fight, or anything that's telling me that Pantoja is going to lose. I think that Pantoja is going to win this, and I think that he's just a more well-rounded, more technically excellent fighter. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, possibly the most well-rounded champion in all of the UFC. Is very underrated.
Level.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, a bit underrated, like we mentioned previously. He's way down in the pound-for-pound rankings, even though he's one of the best champions, just because it's a very the lightest weight class.
Yeah.
But when you look at him technically, he's very, very good, and there aren't any real holes in his game that I can see when watching his fights. But Kai Kara-France, on the other hand, he has a high ceiling.
He's a good striker.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
But he doesn't have the just well-rounded technical excellence that we talked about with Pantoja. He doesn't have the wrestling or the just kicks or just general
mixing
MMA.
it up.
Yeah, the general MMA just excellency of
Pantoja, and that's one of the big strengths of Pantoja is he will drag you to the place where you're most uncomfortable.
Yeah,
a bit like Volkanovski used to do back in the day. He's so well grounded that he can choose. He's good at everything, right? So he chooses the one where you're the worst, and it drags you there and to win the fight there, basically. So I would have to agree. Would you say it's going to be points or finish, or?
I think it's going to be a unanimous decision.
Okay.
I think that Pantoja, he's very technically excellent, like we covered, but he's not really known for that many finishes.
No.
In general, it's mostly very dominant decision machine.
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to be maybe not super dominant, but at least dominant on the wrestling, and very competitive still on the feet, with Pantoja edging out a unanimous decision.
Unanimous decision. Okay. Yeah.
What do you think?
I would predict maybe a submission, actually.
Yeah.
Somewhere later in the fight, round 4 or 5. I think a bit similar to Merab's last fight, where his coach was like, "You're great, but you're taking a bit too many points decisions here, and you're so good that surely you can work out the way to finish this guy and not go all the rounds." And I think also that Pantoja is good enough to do that, especially against a guy like Kai Kara-France, who has a few holes in his game.
Yeah, it's a bit similar actually to the Merab O'Malley.
Yeah, not too far off. Yeah,
it's just in a weight division down.
Yeah, exactly. So I would think that Pantoja can work out the way to submit him, possibly here. I mean, it's not really a knockout guy, is it? But the wrestling and the BJJ is one of Pantoja's strengths and a weak point for Kakara France, so that's where I'm going to go with the submission late in the fight here.
Yeah, well, that's our prediction for that fight. So moving on, we have Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. So up and coming Joshua Van with his, I think his 4th fight or 5th fight already in 2025. It's absolutely insane.
It's ridiculous.
What do you think about this one?
I mean, he fought this month. He fought previously in the start of June, and now he's here.
Insane.
And it was on the prelims as well.
Yeah.
And now he's here on the 3rd fight on International Fight Week on the main card. It's a close one when you look at the odds here, and Brandon Royval is very experienced and a very good guy. But against such a young and hungry contender, I would have to predict Joshua Van just with the amount of momentum that he has right now, and his technicality and the hunger, especially with a young and up-and-coming guy like that. And I think Royval, he's really good, of course, but I don't think it will be enough to stand up against Joshua Van here. What do you think?
No, I completely agree. I think that if you're looking at this fight on paper, then you're having this number 1 contender, Brandon Royval, and you're against this, up and coming, just 12th ranked Joshua Van, and you're probably thinking, oh, Brandon Royval is going to sweep this guy, but Joshua Van is a different beast. In his latest fight, he's already, as you covered, he's already fighting again this month. And in his latest fight, he had over 120 significant strikes in
insane.
3 rounds before achieving a TKO. That's, I think, is the highest amount of significant strikes I've seen in just 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And then ending in a TKO. So
it's mental.
Yeah. And then after that incredibly intense fight with throwing that many strikes, he's still saying, I want to go again this month.
Yeah. Against the number 1
ranked,
ranked.
a much better opponent. So
that shows his mentality as well, right?
Yeah. So already, although I think that there is absolutely a possibility here, and the odds are showing that there is a possibility here that Joshua Van gets sat down, he gets maybe a bit of a reality check. You need to slow down, you need to take a bit earlier or easier opponents before you go up at such a high level opponent.
Yeah.
I just think that Joshua Van, as you said, he has so much power behind him, such a good run as of late. He's fighting so much. It's really difficult for me to see him just not powering through. I really think that he has the ability. If there's anyone that's going to be powering through as an underdog, I think it's going to be him. That's going to power through Brandon Royval, and I think that Brandon Royval is getting a bit older, maybe getting a bit more tired. He's not the most super endurable maybe fighter in the flyweight. I mean, he's obviously really good, but I think that he might get pummeled. Although he's also a volume puncher, I think that his volume is going to be countered by Joshua Van's just superior volume, and I think this might go to a split decision for Joshua Van.
Split decision?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think so, because I still think that it's such a difficult fight to just move up.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a brutal fight, actually. But yeah, split decision. I have a really hard time seeing Joshua Van getting a unanimous decision. That's so difficult to get, I think, as against that level of opponent. So
yeah, I'm gonna say here that Brandon Royval probably underestimates him.
Yeah.
And I think Joshua Van will actually find a finish here because in this fight going for Joshua Van, I think it's honestly gonna be easier and more likely for him to win via finish here than to win a decision against such an experienced guy as Brandon Royval.
That is true.
But like I said, I can't see him edge out a close decision. That is possible. But I actually think that he's going to end up shocking Brandon Royval with his power here and win via TKO in this fight, possibly.
He got the TKO in his latest fight.
Yeah. And so like you said, he adds up so many significant strikes as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to help him. But yeah, so we're both going for Joshua Van there, an up-and-coming interesting contender. Interesting matchup to watch. What do you think about the next fight on the card? Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano.
Yeah, two old Guys from the lightweight division who have both been in their primes have been very good. Or at least top level contenders. So this is it's almost a retirement fight. It's a high level fight, but at the same time almost a retirement fight, because neither of them feel like they're not going to go in there thinking I'm going to get 2 wins in a row and then I'm going to go for a title shot. Both of them are so for life. I'm here, we're going to fight, we're going to throw down, I'm going to collect a check, you're going to collect a check. So one of us is going to, it's Mano Moicano. And I just think that Mano Moicano, he's used to taking those fights, getting a paycheck, and I think that he's going to show up. I think so. I think that he's not going to feel a lot of pressure. I think he's just going to be into it. I'm going to collect a check. I'm going to get out of here with that money. And I think that Darius is sort of more finished.
I think he's going to retire after this one. Definitely. And I think Moicano's going to be a bit more hungry, especially after being submitted by Islam Makhachev last time.
And he had a title shot. You can't forget that even if he's finished as well, he recently had a title shot against
and a really good run before that, actually. He beat Benoit Saint-Denis, who is a good contender. So I believe that Moicano is the superior fighter here, and I would have to say that I'm going to go with a difficult one, but I'm going to say a KO or TKO somewhere in the second or third round. What would you predict here? For Moicano, that is, of course.
I think so as well. I think a third round.
Third round
TKO.
Okay.
That makes sense. So, are we... we are in agreement, basically, in that.
Moicano's gonna take that one, and then Darius is probably gonna retire, surely, after that one. Okay, and the last fight on the main card, it's Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Who do you have on this one?
I think that Felipe Lima, he's a very well-rounded fighter, up-and-coming prospect, you can call him, and I think that he's going to edge out this win against Peyton Talbot. What do you think? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. Do you see this one being a decision or possibly a finish? Or
I think it's more of a decision. I think it's going to be a decision because it's still both of them, I think, are quite young. So it's not like one of them is going to be much slower or faster or more powerful. I just think that it's the kind of case where Lima is just a more well-rounded fighter. With more momentum behind him, so I think he's just going to edge out on decision here.
Definitely.
More volume, more control, probably.
I totally agree. Like you said, he's so well-rounded, Lima, and he's undefeated in the UFC so far. I mean, he's, like you said, a really young guy, but also very confident. I think he looks when he fights, and I think that can take you a long way. So I'm gonna go with the Felipe Lima finish. I would say, can he I'm gonna say a submission, actually, in round 2 would be my official prediction there.
I'm going with a unanimous decision for Lima.
Both for Lima, right? Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of the Walkout Podcast, and we look forward to watching UFC 317 this Saturday.
And be sure to tune in next week, where we're going to be giving our recap of the 317 card.
So don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.